Hey, I'm Benno, and this is Poetry for Pagans, and today we'll be interviewing music video director Emma Higgins. So Emma is a really accomplished music video director, and I'll be posting a link to her website below, and today I'll be talking with her about her music videos for the band Mother Mother for their track Haylofts, parts 1 and 2. What I recommend is check out the music videos first, and then check out the interview. Emma, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you sharing your time and knowledge with us. I should say that Emma and I know each other from my time at Warner. We did a couple music videos together. So welcome and thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks so much for having me. I love what you're doing. I think it's really important to be able to share for people what we do and hopefully get more cool people up and working.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And today we're going to be talking about the Mother Mother music videos, plural, for Hayloft. So this is a really unique situation where there's two music videos and two different versions of the song. How were you approached on this project?
Yeah, this was an exceptionally interesting one. I've never had something quite like this. I have done double videos before, but never one that was quite, the song is even a sequel, It's not like it's like two videos sometimes off an album that are both getting singles or videos from it. It's totally like the continuation, so it really made sense. I'm not always a huge fan of the video that continues on because I find that often people don't watch them in order with the way that people consume music videos these days. Like you just get a video and you might not realize that you're watching the second one first. But this time it really made sense. So I was approached by the band directly on this one or through their management because I had worked with them previously. So they had reached out and said, do you want to talk with Ryan, who's the singer of the band? He's got this sequel and we want to make these two videos. And do you want to talk to him? Because he's got a lot of ideas and maybe you two can come up with something. So that's how it started.
And was there a label involved and a commissioner or no?
In this case, not in this process. There is a label, yes, and the label paid for it. And that label actually, I think, was Warner. It was Warner. But they were not particularly involved, I think, just because of this. I think it's different, as you know, every time with every different artist and stuff like this. But Mother Mother's been a band for a long time now. And I think that they kind of just are given a little bit of like, they have the people that they like to work with and they're given a little bit of freedom. The label, I guess, gave them a budget and said, okay, great, you can go and take this budget to whom you want to make the video with. So they didn't really get involved in the process of reaching out to me, but they were involved, I guess, in paying for it. And, we're on all our emails and everything like that.
So did Ryan approach you with some ideas or was it kind of a clean slate?
Well, in this case, because the song is so narrative, there really had a base that we wanted to stick to. And then he also did have a lot of ideas. I think this one was very interesting. We had a lot of talks about how to go about the creative, and there was probably 4 or 5 different rewrites of the treatment actually too. And it was one of those ones that I think is incredibly special to me because the song had gotten a lot of attention, especially in a non-binary gender community as well too.
Interesting.
Just because I think of some of the language as well that the song uses and that Mother Mother has used in their previous thing. They have a very big queer and non-binary audience, and that had already attached themselves to this song, and there felt an incredible responsibility to not disappoint them or do something that felt insensitive or wrong. And the song also dealt in violence and trying to handle that in a way that didn't perpetuate things or send the wrong message. Or there was a version of this that was entirely like a Kill Bill, like revenge story in the second half, and then we rewrote that. We decided against that, which I think was really the right move, and really kind of made it about healing a little bit more and like what that means to break generational trauma and violent cycles, which is a lot to take on in a music video.
One thing I really like about the videos is that it doesn't actually just have this strict revenge timeline to it or arc to it. That, in the end, she
in some ways kind of becomes her father or reflective of her father in that way. And I find that's really interesting rather than her just kind of going up and, you know, ending it.
Yeah, and that's, one of these like wonderful things. The reason I'm so happy to talk about these videos too is because I'm very proud of them in the sense too that we actually had the time as well to develop the ideas. I think sometimes in music videos, if we'd been forced to, I think we had a few weeks probably of going back and forth before we had to shoot from the time that Ryan and I connected to the shoot. So we were able to rewrite the treatment and really have a couple long phone calls about the ideas so that we could develop it to a place. Because if we'd just gone with the first idea, it probably would have been the straight up revenge one. And sometimes music videos happen so quickly, you don't have time to spend in that development process. So I was really grateful that we did this time.
Do you feel comfortable sharing what the budget for this video was?
Yes, I think it wound up being for 2 videos, I want to say 80 grand Canadian.
Okay.
So Canadian, I think that was, and we did it over a weekend. And that was a fight to get that much money. It could have been 60.
What is that in US dollars? Forgive my ignorance.
It's like, it probably would be like, if it was like 80, I can do the math, probably like 50 or something like that. It's really like a very good exchange. I always try and convince people to come to either Canada or Mexico to shoot because your dollar goes a lot further than it does in the US, but you have to travel.
Absolutely. So I looked online and I noticed there's a version of this video from, not this version, but a video for the song from 13 years ago. Do you know the story behind that?
Yeah, so that's the other interesting part about this is that Mother Mother is one of these bands that has been around for a really long time, and the internet and TikTok specifically found them in the pandemic in 2020 and found old music. So it was kind of one of these wonderful stories too about Hayloft was a single off an album that I had actually even worked on that album 13 years ago as an animator, which was a real full circle moment for me because I worked in production design, and there's some stop motion animation that I spent a summer doing for that album for them 13 years ago in 2008, 14 years ago. And so to be able to have it come around. So anyhow, they put out this music, and I think that the radio people and all that kind of stuff said, like, this isn't a single, this song is too weird. And it kind of became like a smaller thing that they released in Canada, and they made a video for it at the time, but it didn't become big, and they were just kind of at the very beginning of their career. And then over the pandemic, TikTok found it, and this queer community and this like TikTok community found it, and the song got like massive, and it just found its audience 13 years after its release. So this is what inspired their sequel, and just to revisit sort of the visuals and they remastered some stuff, and they re-released the song along with a follow-up song just for the community that had found it, which is a really wild thing that you don't hear about happening often, but it was really cool.
So let's talk a little bit about pre-production. You mentioned that you had time to develop the story with the band and Ryan. There's obviously a lot of moving parts. You're talking about 2 videos. Are you a storyboarder? Are you a shot lister? Do you just kind of chat it through and think it through? What's your pre-production process like?
Well, this one too, because we had 2 days to do it, and I'd be happy to share this as well, is I shot the first video on my iPhone before we shot it. So really big part of this was, first of all, finding the location, because we needed one location that had both a barn and a hayloft and a house and kind of all close together. So that was a big part of the pre-production. And then once we found that location, we did a very intensive tech survey, is what we call them, when you have the entire crew before the shoot, your AD, your DP, and everyone, your production designer come through. We walked through all of it, and we actually talked through my shot list and then shot it on iPhone. And then I took that back and cut it together. I did that for just to make sure we get the timing right. And the other reason being that we had so much to shoot in 2 days that I needed to make sure that we got only what we needed, because we would not have time for anything extra. The only thing we couldn't really do was like the burning house stuff, because we couldn't really like pre-shoot that in its entirety. So that didn't get cut into there. But with narrative videos, you can't just cut to performance, you have to get all the shots. And so you can't just cut shots in your day when you get behind schedule. You need to get them all. So I was just trying to be extremely efficient. So that was a really big part of this one, was efficiency, because I think we shot well over 100 shots to get both videos in the weekend, which meant we were doing over 50 shots a day, which, if you know, filmmaking is a lot of setups.
So you mentioned that you had 2 days to shoot this. Any particular, what was the vibe on set? I'm sure you're moving at if you're doing 50 shots a day, that's a pretty breakneck speed. What was the vibe? How was the actual execution of the music video?
Yeah, I think you're right on there with, it was fast. It was very fast. Because we had such a good idea of what we were doing, though, I'm a huge believer in that if whenever you can, it felt really good, because sometimes in music videos, there's so many factors, and you don't really, and you're going to have to like play with the changes, and people will have a lot of different ideas. But this was one of these unique times where I really feel like everyone was very aligned on what we were making, and we all knew what shots we had to get. And then we were just able to kind of paint within those and go through it. So the vibe was a very efficient and determined. And I think that, the other thing about this was there was an overlying fear of flooding and rain. It was pouring rain, and about 2 days after we finished shooting, like that week, there was massive flooding on that farm and everywhere. So we kind of were just waiting to see what was going to happen. So there's these like, what an act of God type things happening in the background too, that were probably one of the more stressful factors to the shoot.
Let's talk post-production. Anna Catley was the editor on this. Is this someone you had worked with before? Do you have a long-standing relationship with her? What was that process like for you?
Yeah, we actually had 2 different editors. We had Anna Catley, and then we had Leah Lalick on the second one. So both of them are people that I've worked with before. And we had the only reason it wasn't the same editor was because our schedule needed to turn them both around so quickly. But Leah and Anna both work in a collective of cool female editors called Coven. So I had worked with them both before, and I'd worked with Coven many, many times. So they worked simultaneously, but together, which really made sense, because using 2 independent editors for stories that needed to tie together wouldn't have worked, but also it would have been such an overwhelming schedule for one person to do. So I was really lucky to have the 2 of them simultaneously working and sharing the flow. And we did just Zoom sessions for this too, because they were in Toronto and I was back in LA at that point.
Yeah, it's so interesting having cut music videos myself, like to have 2 editors working simultaneously, but in the same room. Is that right?
Yeah, they were together in Toronto.
Yeah, and it works so well because the cutting styles on both the videos are, they hang together. That you could do a lot of really nice cuts to the music, or they did a lot of nice cuts to the music. And that really, it really looks like a cohesive overall piece. I think it worked out really well in that capacity.
Yeah, both of them came up under the same editor as well too, so they have similar styles of working. Although I think we fit them in the right edits for each of their styles too, because Hayloft 2, the second part, is much more sort of stylized, and Leah tends to be more of that like style, like music frantic editor a little bit more, and Anna tends to go a little more classical narrative. And Hayloft 1 is much more like the setup of the story, and then the second one is kind of when it goes batshit crazy, for lack of a better term. But yeah.
So it sounds like, again, in the build up to this, the band obviously turned over a lot to you. What was the notes process like? Did the label come in at all at this point, or were they still like, you go do what you want to do with the band?
No, the label did come in at this point as well, and so did the band, with just and it felt like a good conversation too. Again, it felt like one of these things where mostly we wanted to be sensitive about things like, I mean, the song so clearly references, the lyrics are "My daddy's got a gun." We had a gun in there. At the same time, guns are an incredibly sensitive subject, and gun violence as well. So like how to handle that in a way that felt tactful was also an important thing for us. So there was conversations about that. It was, you know, it's a lot to take on for a music video. Um, so there were conversations about that, and some of the edit and pacing and things like that. But because the band wasn't in it, I think the label had a few less qualms about, you know, normally it would be like getting the right performance shots or making them look really good. So there was less to comment on, I think, for that reason.
What's been the reaction? It's been out about a year now, I think. What's the reaction been like for you?
It's one of the more positive things I've ever had put out in the world, and I'm really,
Really?
really proud of it because the reactions have been so good. Everyone has been really taking different things from it, which I think is incredible. Like, I think they got the messaging that we wanted to come through, which I was concerned about a little. Um, just because it is so much. You're again talking about generational trauma. Is that going to translate in a music video? And I think it did. And I love reading the comments. I'd read the YouTube comments. I never do that on other videos, but because normally it's not great, but people have different theories about things in it too, which I find fascinating. And I think that that is the best thing about both music and art in general, is that when people put their own they project onto it and they're able to interpret it in different ways. And that's really exciting for me to see different people ingesting the video and interpreting different meanings from it and taking different emotional takeaways. So it's been really cool to see that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the music video it's a tour de force. So congratulations on that. It's super powerful. And I watched it first in the director's cut you sent me, which is both of them together. And it hits you, you know. Yeah, so congratulations on it. I think it turned out amazingly well. I wanted to ask you just one follow-up question or postscript question. You recently participated on a panel on the state of music videos today, and I'm wondering if you could like share some of your experience and thoughts on that panel and how it went.
Yeah, so that was with We Direct Music Videos, which is collective started by the Daniels and Daniel Kwan, who just won the Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and he won many Oscars. It was a great moment for music video directors everywhere, I think, because for all of us, it validated so much of this, like, you know, music videos are storytelling, and there is a path to storytelling through them. And he started this collective a few years ago just to try and strengthen the community, which is really, I think, been shifting in a big way and very quickly, especially with the new content. So this was our first panel back after COVID, and obviously a ton has changed in the last 3 years since that happened, in the way that music videos are made, and beyond that, you know, with TikTok and everything happening too. So I was a little concerned going into the panel that it was going to be extremely depressing and that it would be this like post-mortem on how music videos are gone and dead. But I was relieved that it was not the case. Actually, we had panelists who were like we had commissioners, we had producers, we had directors, both very, very experienced and newer as well. And I think that the takeaway was really that, yes, music videos are changing, and that there's going to be probably more of this like 360 content creation too, where you're rather almost than being like a classic music video director, maybe like you once were, it might shift to being more of like almost like a creative director. So you're doing maybe some TikTok, maybe you're doing album artwork, you're maybe doing visualizers and a music video kind of all in the same sort of package, just because people need more content. And even with TikToks and all these things too, there's a way to express and still continue doing storytelling, which was the good takeaway too. I think there was a really positive, strong message of this panel too, that especially for young people, if you want to be getting into music videos, one of the EPs who I work with at a production company called Fella, her name's Fulian, and she has been producing music videos for a really long time, and she offered up the advice, which was make cool shit. Just make cool shit. It doesn't matter what platform it is, if it's on TikTok, if it's of a music video, if it's a visualizer, if it's something, whatever, just keep making cool shit and find, it doesn't matter the form that it takes. And you will get noticed and you will be able to hopefully just build, but you just have to keep making cool shit and make things that are authentic to you is the other sort of message there too, is like, and I think that took me a really long time as well, was to, you want to find your own voice, find what makes sense to you, and then put that out there, because as soon as you're trying to chase trends, you are too late to it. And it's actually a really positive, good time, because we have so much more access to create that cool shit, as we'd say, and through on your phone, whatever it is. And so that was the big takeaway, I think, too, that even though it is changing, there's more opportunity, and we just need to keep making stuff.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Emma, you definitely make cool shit. And thanks for sharing your experience with Haylofts. I say plural because, well, there's two of them. Yeah, thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Of course. It was my pleasure.
Thanks again to Emma Higgins for doing this interview with me. Be sure and like, subscribe, alert. If you have any questions, post them below. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.